Today I'm going to talk about number sense. Number sense is the understanding of what a number is. The first thing that we usually start doing with our children is we start counting. Counting is the sequence of numbers, and it's developed before the one-to-one correspondence. So that might look like you and your 2 or 3 or 4 or 5-year-old just counting off a sequence of numbers. That is an important skill. It is one of the first skills that kids learn because we tend to count with them. But then taking that counting and understanding what that a number equals an item is the one-to-one correspondence. So in that case, you might have, something like, you have some counters out and they're able to touch each one and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at the early stages, when they do not demonstrate this ability, you might see them do something like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then they're not count. That shows that they don't have that one-to-one correspondence yet. So if your child is not counting one-to-one individually, that would be the next step after just learning a sequence of numbers. Then we come to cardinality. Cardinality is when you can count a number of objects and know that the last number you counted is the answer to how many. So I'm going to put my little counters out here again. And in this case, you're going to see kids do this. They'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you'll ask them, how many are there all together? And they'll start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you'll say, well, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If they can't tell you that this last number you counted is the number of that group altogether, they do not have the concept of cardinality yet. Cardinality is when you know that this set of things here equals the last number that you counted. So I know that there are 5 because I've counted 5. After that, we can talk about the hierarchical inclusion, which is understanding that what is one more or one less. So now that I know that there's 5 here, I could ask, well, what was one more? You know that counting on is one more. They might be able to tell you one more is 6. We practice this every day when we are talking about the days of the week. We're always adding one more. In TK, we haven't talked a lot about one less. We just started doing that when everything was shut down. But that is something you could talk about. If there's 5, what is one less? We got to take one away, and then there's 4. So that idea of one more, one less. And then we also talk about part to whole relationships. So understanding that 6 is made up of 2 and 4, or 5 and 1, or 3 and 3. And this is what we are doing when we decompose numbers. You might remember when I had the 3 plates out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fit all 3 plates in my screen here, but maybe I can get the corners of them. But if I have, let's say I have, we also call this a number bond. You might see that in upper, like starting in kindergarten, first grade. So I have 5 here, and how can I distribute those? Well, I could put 2 over here and 3 over here, and I could know that this is a visualization of 3 and 2 is the same as 5. I can bring them back, and I could do, 4 and 1. Or I could bring them back, and I could do, well, that's it for 5. But anyway, and you could know that you could do the inverse, right? I could do 2 and 3. or I could do 1 and 4. Those all equal 5. So it's we call that decomposing numbers, or if you might see it on a piece of paper where they're circling. You might see them in circles like, hang on there. You might see them in circles like this. This is what we call a number bond. And when they get into we're using manipulatives in TK to show this, but you might see something like 5 is equal to, 3 and 2. That's a number bond. All right, so it's coming back to number sense. So that's part to whole relationships. Magnitude, coming back up here, I skipped magnitude, knowing which is more or less without counting. This goes with subitizing. So right now I'm going to transition into subitizing. Sometimes you hear subitizing. It's a potato thing, I've been told. So you could say either thing. Subitizing is knowing how many without counting. So a lot of times you do this in different ways. We do this with dice patterns. You could see dice, and you know that when you see that 6 pattern, we know that that's 6 without even looking. But if I were to throw these counters out, you might not see 6 right away because it's in a random pattern. Or you might do something like this. Oh, I see 3 here and I see 3 here, and that makes 6. So subitizing is when you see groups of things and you are able to know how much it is without counting. Now, we also use 10 frames or 5 frames, we start with 5 frames often with young children. And if they know that this is a 5 frame, they can see that that's 4 without even counting. That's a learned activity. Here's within a 10 frame. They might know that there's 5 and 4, and that makes 9. We might also see that it's 1 less than 10, and they might know that's 9 that way. You might see, here's some familiar dot patterns. You automatically know this is 4, and 1 more is 5, and you know this is 4, and 1 more is 5, and you might put those together and say 10. So magnitude is knowing which is more or less without counting. That is looking at groups and seeing that one group is more than another. And then subitizing is knowing how many without counting. One other way that we might do that is with just counters. You might see those and know that it's automatically 3. Now, adults can do this in an organized pattern up to 6. But children often, they obviously start with lower numbers and work their way up. So what are some practical ideas for helping your child with number sense? Well, obviously counting things is an important way to practice that skill. Ask what is 1 more or 1 less. Oh, I gave you 4 cookies. If you eat 1, how many will you have? Or I gave you 4 cookies. Would you like 1 more? How many would that be if I gave you 1 more? Play board games that use counting or dice, lots of great games out for children. Lots of board games require that one-to-one correspondence because you'll roll the dice or spin a spinner and you have to count so many squares. So that's really great for the one-to-one correspondence. Also, it's great for seeing, for subitizing because you're seeing the dice patterns on the dice. Dominoes, the same thing, that you're seeing dice patterns and having to play dominoes where you're either matching them up by playing train or any other domino games that you can think of. Card games are great. Any card games. Go Fish, because you're counting how many are on the card. You have to see the patterns, the number patterns on the cards. Arranging things in patterns. We've talked a lot about making patterns. So that's a great idea for number sense. Looking for small sets of things and ask how many without counting. I was making pancakes yesterday. I was making blueberry pancakes. And I put my batter on the griddle and then I throw my blueberries on top of it like this. And I was just thinking to myself, oh, that would be a great way for subitizing, because I can look and say, oh, how many blueberries did I just throw down there? I wasn't even looking. I just grabbed a few. Oh, there's 4. What if I add one more? I need one more on this side of the pancake. Oh, now I have 5. So when you're cooking together as a family, that's a great way. Just seeing sets of things and talking about numbers. So I hope these give you some ideas about how you can encourage number sense in your home. And number sense in young children is something that is caught, not necessarily taught. You learn number sense by experiencing the world around you. So by doing all of these things and talking about them, you're encouraging understanding numbers in our world. Thanks.